and welcome to Story Power. We're your hosts, Patrick McAndrew
and Karen Fogg.
We're podcasting today from Forest Park, which is in the western suburbs of Chicago.
More specifically, Patrick's dining room. And we are here to talk about stories that changed our world. Okay, so today we have a special guest. Super excited. Ty Johnson is joining us, and Ty is a friend and colleague too. Actually started out as a colleague, and she was a teacher at our school, and then she decided to explore the world. And actually, we're going to talk a little bit about that.
We're going to try and watch the ums.
We are watching our ums.
Okay.
Yeah, so be aware, Ty. I don't know.
Dang it, now that's all I'm going to be thinking about.
I know. So Ty Johnson was a 5th grade teacher at our school before she decided to venture out and teach elsewhere. And actually, that's what we're going to talk about today, because Patrick is also kind of a guest today, not just a host, because both of these teachers and people have taught and lived overseas. So we're going to focus on why they chose to do that, how they made that happen, what they found most challenging, and what rewards you get from teaching and living abroad. I know there's lots of great stories. So, Ty Johnson, welcome to our podcast. Super excited to have you.
I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, good. I'm excited to have you.
I woke up today for this. So.
Barely.
Barely.
I'm also the driver for the podcast, so right. I picked her up. Had to give her the wake-up call and waited for her to come, so I'm so glad she's here. So Ty is so besides being a teacher, Ty is really an artist. Actually, that's how I see you more than anything, Ty. And when I say artist, I'm going to use it in the broadest sense of the word artist, because I think that not only are you a painter, and she does beautiful works of art. She's created clothing designs and all kinds. So let's say, I think the visual arts, but she also writes. She's an amazing writer. She can sing. She's really a creative thinker and teacher. So she's kind of a Renaissance person. So that's how I view Ty Johnson. And so when I say she's a teacher, artist, I think it's much more than that. She's one of the people that is in my life that I am so glad she is in my life. I'm going to get really emotional talking about it.
Okay, well, I'll cut in here then.
Hey.
Let's take this a different direction.
Wait a minute. We're still talking about me. More of that, please.
So let's hear from you, Ty, as to why you decided to teach abroad. And I'm going to let you share kind of the why of it, and then the how of it, and then where actually you decided to teach. So why don't you
teach abroad? It always sounds funny to me, the idea.
Yeah.
Which abroad did you teach?
Anyways,
nobody got that? Okay. Anywho, okay. So let's see. What was the question again?
Well, why did you decide to make that?
Yeah, why did you decide to go overseas?
Why? I needed a change, to be honest. I needed something different to happen in life. I felt like I was in a cycle that was just the same things over and over again, and I needed something to split that up, And so I decided it was really a last minute decision, because I never thought I would live outside Chicago. I'm a Chicago girl through and through, whatever. So I never thought I would live outside of Chicago. Oops, I said
That's okay.
See, now you're going to focus on it.
That's okay, but you'll actually stop after a while, so it will happen. You'll be more conscious.
Once you become really self-aware of it, you're going to be like, you'll even stop yourself. Wait, but here's what it'll do. It ends up throwing off your thought process.
A little bit. But after a while.
Because
don't worry about it, because we have our fabulous technician here, Nathaniel. Say hi, Nathaniel.
Hello.
and he'll remove all of the ums.
I thought she was cursing. No, it's
just an I am going to interject a little bit, because when Ty says that this was a last minute decision, it was kind of a last minute decision. However, you have to say that you had been thinking about wanting a change in your life for a really long time. And I think sometimes things kind of fall in place. Sort of the universe gets aligned and something sort of offers itself, or maybe you just feel like, this is my opportunity, this is my time. So what was it for you that kind of made that click where you said, I'm going to do this?
Well, it was your student teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So
Jeffrey.
Jeffrey. So one of Karen's student teacher was in my classroom, and we were talking about basically teaching abroad. And he was saying that what he was going to do was after he finished, he was older, so he said after he finished teaching, doing his student teaching, he was going to get his 401k because he had worked in another field, and he was going to open up a school in Brazil. And I was like, wait, what? People do that? It just opened up a totally different world for me that I hadn't even thought about happening,
And this was the last trimester of our school year, actually, too, just to set the stage.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
It's like March.
Yes.
I think it was like March or April.
No, I think it was even later.
It was later than that. Yeah, it was April or May.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was like, that sounds kind of interesting. So then we started talking about teaching abroad, and that really is what sparked the interest altogether. So after that, I started looking up like different places to teach and started, maybe I could do this. And I was talking to my mom about it, like, hey, Mom, you could come too. We could just do an adventure together,
Because her mom was about to retire.
She's about to retire. Yeah. So she was kind of deciding if she was going to retire or not. And so it was like, just go ahead and retire. We can kind of do this together, blah, blah, blah. And I started looking up places, and I found a school in Macau, China was one place. That'd be kind of interesting. I never even really heard of it, but that'd be kind of fun. And it was another, I applied for a few different places, and Macau kind of got back to me first, and then another position came up in Dubai, which I never really thought about moving to Dubai either. I mean, people had been like visiting there a lot, like within the last year or so, and it wasn't a desire of mine, like, okay, it's a desert, whatever, but I ended up finding the school there as well. So it was like two different schools that were approached me about being there. They were like the top ones that came to the
And I remember you had that dilemma where you were kind of like weighing the places, and I was actually pushing for Macau.
Yeah, I know.
But she was like, you were already leaning towards Dubai, I think, then too.
Because it was because of the position.
Yeah.
So the Dubai position was more of a innovative learning coordinator position is what we called it. And I was supposed to be able to go in and actually make it my own. And the school seemed like a school that was it was a progressive school. Technically, air quotes, supposed to be a progressive school. So I was like, this would be kind of exciting to do. I can do a lot of fun things and try new things in this particular place. And I wasn't just working with kids. I was going to be working with adults and blah, blah, blah. So I think that actually would be kind of cool. So I was kind of fighting for that a little bit more.
Was the school new?
It was newer. So it was like
newer.
This third
okay, but it wasn't
year.
going to be, you weren't going to be starting their first year.
No.
Okay.
It was that third year.
Okay.
And they were trying to grow it too. They were trying to expand grade levels too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the idea was that every year they would expand to a different grade level.
Okay.
Right?
So when you were applying, what was the grade levels? K through?
Pre-K.
Pre-K through
5th.
Oh, okay. So just elementary.
Right. And when I say pre-K, it was, so the way it is there is you have pre-K, which is like maybe 2 to 3 year olds, K1, which is like our pre-K, so 4-year-olds, and then you have kindergarten, which is K2.
Yeah.
So
okay.
it was,
It was similar in Nepal.
Okay.
Lincoln School was similar.
Yeah. And so that went up to 5th grade my first year. I was there. The second year they didn't get enough kids. The numbers weren't right, so it really only went up to 4th grade. So it's another story.
Yeah. Which we can share a little bit later if you feel like sharing it. So Patrick, what was the why of your decision to live and teach abroad?
So I had been traveling frequently to parts of Asia and had spent a fair amount of time in both India and Nepal, actually with you, Karen. Karen and I traveled together, and just fell in love with that part of the world and the people and the culture and the lifestyle and the food and just everything about it, and had said, wouldn't it be an adventure to live somewhere else? And the other piece that I guess was different for me was that I knew people there. And I had made connections with families that I sponsored over many years, and thought about the possibility of some of the younger kids in some of those families, just raising them and putting them through good schools and kind of seeing their success, kind of sponsoring them, etc. So I had that motivation.
And I have to say, it was one of those places when we first went to Nepal, we even both said, oh my gosh, I could live here. I mean, it's just, sometimes you just hit a spot.
Right.
And I don't know what you felt like when you were in Dubai, if that was a place that you even, once you got there, if you thought, this is a good place for me to live or not.
I thought it was a good transition place.
Yeah, okay.
Just because it was still big city-ish.
Yeah.
So I didn't... And it was very metropolitan, right?
Yeah, so it's a hub of the Middle East.
Right,
I mean, it's got every amenity that you got. I mean, they've got
and
indoor
very westernized,
skiing.
right?
Very
westernized.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So it was a good transition.
Did they have a Garrett's popcorn?
They did.
See?
And
right?
I was there.
Garrett's popcorn.
That was my little piece of
Chicago
Chicago.
popcorn
Oh,
in the Middle East.
Yeah.
They have
They
one
had
in
everything
Bangkok,
there.
Thailand, too. It's so
they
bizarre.
Do. They do.
And if you don't know what Garrett's popcorn is, it's delicious. I like the Chicago mix.
They have
a
it in Tokyo.
Oh my god, I like it with a little bit of.
But it is a
caramel corn and cheese
Chicago
mixed
original.
together.
I mean,
Yeah,
so
it
that's funny that it ends up on
wait, now I want
the
some.
other side of the
I know.
I don't know. I have a
right?
taste. Okay,
Okay.
when we're done with this, we're gonna go get some.
So I guess that was my why. My why was I had been there. I was familiar with the country. I didn't speak the language. I knew people there. I thought that type of transition to a place where I had kind of a support system in place already with all these friends that would help me out, I kind of felt the move would be easy. And plus, just thinking about the situation in the current school that I was in, I was getting to a point where I was feeling I had kind of plateaued.
You wanted to change.
Yeah, and I was
I've been
ready
feeling the
for I was ready for something different. I needed a change.
Yeah, and I think that happens a lot, and it's I think that one of the exciting things is it's to hear people who have actually been through this kind of mindset where you're thinking, I need to change, I need to mix up my life in some way, I need to go in a different direction, and you actually did it.
Right.
A lot of people have that, and they get a little bit nervous or scared or don't know how.
Right.
Like, wait, what do I do? How do I go about it? I mean, yours was a fast process. Where you didn't really, I
didn't really think about it.
I mean, it was so weird when you
said
said you were gonna. I remember you were like, "I'm gonna do this," and I'm like, "Oh my god!" And
I'm a Gemini, and we just do those kinds of things.
so it was just kind of a perfect storm for you. And with Patrick, you really did kind of plan it out.
Yeah,
because you had
wanted to do
your
it for
process was
years.
right.
Yeah.
I had wanted to do it for years, and then tried to do it by applying at the American school in Kathmandu. But then once it got to be that year before I left, it was an interview in the fall. Then it was getting the position, and then the whole rest of the year from or the whole rest of the school year. When I use the term year, I mean the school year. December to May was, getting stuff, getting rid of everything in my apartment, finding a shipping company to ship my stuff. What was I going to take with me?
Right.
What was I going to do with my car? Things like that. You just have to figure out what do you do with all your stuff? Right. Well, and the funny thing is,
Meanwhile,
right.
I should have probably thought about that a little more before.
Right, so I had a year to do it, and you had
She had
2 months.
You really just had weeks. I'm
Right,
gonna say
weeks.
weeks. I'm gonna say weeks by the time you actually made your decision.
Yeah.
And then you made your move. I mean, really, that was a lot.
But I remember when Patrick was trying to, because we talked together for a little bit, right? And I remember when he was always talking about wanting to go to another place, move abroad. And I'd be like, I don't know why anybody wants to move from here. It doesn't make any sense, And then later on, it was like, okay. I remember even when you come back and share your stories with our camp, and it still never really hit me like, I should move somewhere else until later.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sometimes it just takes a while for things to kind of click in your brain that this is the right thing for you to do and this is the time to do it.
But I'll tell you what I felt like, and when I look back on the journey now, it feels like Dorothy.
Oh.
Okay, so one of my favorite movies is The Wiz, and so I feel like Dorothy in The Wiz. Like, you get to a place where you are, I don't know, like home is great, whatever. Like she had a lovely home. And I'm talking The Wiz, not The Wizard of Oz. I know it's the same story basically, but just in case throw a Michael Jackson reference in and someone else gets confused. Anyhow, but she...
Or Nipsey Russell.
Or Diana Ross.
Diana Ross.
I really consider myself Diana Ross. I do. No, but yeah, so just being able to... that story I feel like really resonates with my journey altogether because it took me to go away to really realize how much I did what I had at home. You know, like I'm here now, and I'm pretty set on being here for the most part at this point. Now, not to say I would never go anywhere else again, because I can, and I'm pretty open. But at the same time, it allowed me to really go away and appreciate, you know, all those things, the people and the things, etc., that made me who I am.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and you have a strong connection to your family, just as I do too, which is what kind of prevented me from making that, because I am really connected with family, and I wouldn't want to be that far away from them. You know, at the time, I also had a grandmother who was still alive, who was very much, you know, somebody that I wanted to spend time with, and she lived to be, you know, 94, so I was really fortunate. But I wasn't ready to, I wasn't willing to do that. So, and I know you're very close with your family. Your mom was lucky enough to be able to come out, and your sister did too. Yeah,
for a few months.
Yeah, which was nice.
Well, because initially my mom was gonna come move with me, but then when I got to Dubai, it was like, oh, my place is a little too small. She's gonna be having movers, inners, people moving in. So we scratched that, but then she did come and stay like a couple of months at a time. So it was nice. And that was really nice to have her there. So, you know, you need that grounding when you're,
especially when you go through those transitions. I mean,
I was lucky because when I did it, Karen came with me.
Yeah.
So we spent June, July, and part of August together. Okay. So it was good to have have the stability of a best friend there when you're, and it was super hard, of course, but it did provide a sense of support. You know, from
even for me to be able to meet some of the new people that were coming in and meet the staff there and see where you were going to be, your new home, all of that. So that was really important, and it just made it, I think, easier too to just kind of transition you into that.
Yeah, I would think just going cold like you did, Ty, would just be. I would just find that personally, and like you said, you're a Gemini and I'm a Sagittarius Scorpio, so I'm super organized and super.
Nathaniel, what are you? Sorry, chime in.
Capricorn.
Okay.
So I just find things have got to be kind of planned out and organized, and I would have just found the stress of moving to another country just 100% overwhelming. And it would have been, and then on top of, you know, starting a new job. Yeah. So anytime, a move is hard enough. A move to a foreign country ups the game. And then starting a new job on top of it, you know, there's all the stress that comes with being a teacher in a new school with people that have already been there, with an administration that's already been there, and you're the new guy now. So there's it's just this.
All those unknowns.
Right. You're
all
just
those
this.
Unknowns.
Yeah. It was just a big ball of stress, but having you there, Karen, when I was doing it was a lot easier. So having your mom with you.
You know, my mom, what we did was, before I moved to Dubai, we went on our little world tour. So we went to a few places, and then I went to Dubai alone. So we actually we started in Budapest, and then we went to, I think it was Amsterdam next. No, Budapest, and we went to London, and we stayed there for a little while with some of her friends, which was really cool. I didn't think London was like it was. I thought London was going to be more like posh, and you know, it's like, no, they wild in London. Okay, you know. And it was also funny because coming from Budapest, which was like our pastime was, can you spot any black people? Then you go to London, and London is like, oh, this is really multicultural. This is great, you know. Yeah. And then we went to Amsterdam after that, and then to Madrid. And then my mom left at that point because she had to get back to work, because she still was working at that time. And then I moved, and then I went to Rome, which is like one of the places I've always wanted to visit. And then I went to Dubai after that. So it was funny because when I first left, I wasn't like, I was ready, you know, so I wasn't like, oh my God, crying, That didn't hit me.
I don't think you had time either. If you think about it, it was such a whirlwind time.
It was good though. Yeah. You know, I don't think it even really hit me until after I completed my first year, came back home for the summer, because I didn't come home during that whole year. Came back home for the summer. When it was time to come back, that's when it hit me. And it was like, oh my God, I want to go home. I don't want to do this anymore. What am I doing, you know? And it was like I was leaving at a time where it was like so much love was happening. You know, like a friend of mine was going through some health issues, and then, you know, and then we just all like got together and was like surrounding him, and then like my family was going through. It was a lot of things going on at the same time, but it was so much love that I was leaving to a certain degree, you know. Yeah. So when I got back to Dubai, I was just like, I think I cried for like at least 3 days straight. And
there's got to, that's, and I know the feeling, that feeling of you're isolated.
Yes.
You
and
know, and even though, like I said, I was surrounded by people that I knew, there is a sense of
but
being
you knew them in a different
alone.
You knew them in a different way until you were developing that every day, knowing them. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that's different too.
Right.
Yeah.
In that sense.
And I had made good friends in Dubai, so it wasn't even that. It just was. It wasn't home. You know, and even. Like, Dubai is a nice place, it's a good place to look at, but it's not Chicago. You know, it's not like the greenery is there in the same way. And I enjoyed all my time in Dubai, but it just, it just wasn't home. And so at that point, it was like, okay, it was already tugging at my heart. And by the time I kind of got over the homesickness, which it was probably about maybe 3 weeks or so down the line, it was a while. Then I started having issues. My grandparents were having some health issues, so it was like, okay, now I can keep doing this. And there was issues that were going on at the school as well. So it was like, the pull to be here is not as strong as the pull to be home. And since I do have a choice, it's not like I don't have a choice. And there are people there who don't have a choice. They can't just go home. I learned so much about the world just in that time period, Like, I'm going to choose to do what I feel like is best for me now. So it's what I ended up like, okay, it's time to go.
Did the school do anything? Because I kind of know what, and I'll let you talk about it, Patrick, but I kind of know a little bit about what your school did to ease the teachers into the culture, all the things, and you can talk a little bit more about it, but did they do anything to kind of help you transition, showing you around, getting you to your place, and what did they do to prepare you for living over in Dubai?
Right. So one of the things, I would say they actually did a good job to some degree in terms of like making sure we were comfortable. They had learned from their mistakes in the past as far as like when new people came in. So they did a good job with that, like making sure you had certain things in the apartment when you got there. You had a car, that you got later, but still. But they also had other teachers who would come, and it really became more like they became like your family. So I think that was another thing that was, you have to figure out ways if you're going overseas so that everyone is not in where you're working, because then you can't separate. But a lot of us live in the same building too, so that was another thing that made it a little bit easier. As far as culturally, we went on a couple of like trips together, and that was more so like I think I pushed like, can we do like a tour or something together so we kind of get a chance to see what's happening around
So you
here.
Initiated that.
Yeah. And I actually did my own tour before that, before we actually started working together. They did things like make sure we had like, they would have like a welcoming barbecue type of a deal for us, things like that. But as far as like really being immersed in a culture, it's a little bit tougher too, just because Dubai is made up of mostly expats, right? So it's, not a place where it's 20% of the people there are Emiratis, and Emiratis are the people who originate, that's their land, It's only about 10-20% of them that are there. And it's very much their place, that's known, but at the same time, everybody else is there. So it's a little bit harder to find, like if I was in a Nepal or even a Macau, where this is a clear culture that you're going into, right? Right. So yeah, we did like a quick little tour with the school, but I did most of the things on my own as far as I wanted to make sure I got out and understood where I was, how to get my bearings. 'Cause I had done so many big bus tours at that point before I got there, because I was in all these different places. Like, I'll do a big bus tour just to kind of get my bearings, But yeah, other than that, they didn't really do anything to help us understand like the culture of something you had pretty much is doing your own. Now, they were trying to build that more into like the curriculum later. Yeah. So that the kids could understand too. But again, that was a work in progress as well. So. Yeah.
Yeah, and at my school, they did everything from, giving us a walking tour of the neighborhood around the school. So we all got together and they said, we're just going to show you the vicinity around our school and what's here and what's around. So we did that. And then every new teacher was given a mentor teacher, and that teacher in my case was Susie, and Susie was a Chicagoan. So she had been in Kathmandu for 30-40 years at this point. So talk about getting a mentor that really knew the lay of the land. Plus she spoke Nepali and everything. So they wanted to acclimate you as as much as possible, not just with the school and all the sort of teacher institute and in-service stuff that you do at the beginning of the school year, but they also wanted to familiarize you with the nature of the neighborhood, the nature of the culture. I mean, giving us ideas about this is what's acceptable in Nepal, this is what you can expect just walking down the street in Nepal. They really made it so that you were comfortable. They had a plan and a program in place to acclimate teachers.
Yeah, I kind of felt like they had that down really nicely because they, I was able to go with you on some of those things. I mean, even some of the lunches or dinners and events that they would do and what they would offer to show you, and even just finding housing too and recommendations on how to live. They were encouraging have somebody have a servant. I mean, they encouraged that at the time. Staff of some sort, and they would make you they would help you have connections if you wanted that, if you chose to live like that. But they said it also made some things easier too.
Right, that makes sense.
So yeah, I mean, I thought they did a pretty.
I thought it was exceptional. Yeah,
job
the
of
transition from the States to there was much easier with all that in place.
But a very well-established school.
Yeah,
right.
A
school that has
newer.
a school that has a 60-year history in Nepal compared to a school that's 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah, and they were so new, and even just what they were trying to do was new to the region too. Yeah. And to be fair, the year that I got there, it was they were getting a new principal, so they had a lot of issues that were going up into that.
Sure.
So that was another. So she hadn't even gotten there by the time I had gotten there, and they had been changing things up. So, yeah.
Okay. So what would you say once you're there, living and working? What were some of the challenges? And some of the challenges we're experiencing right now, in case you didn't hear, somebody is sanding the floor above us, and we're in a new location, and that's the sound. Okay. So let's talk about some of the challenges that you guys encountered. So Ty?
Oh gosh, challenges! Wow.
Yeah. So I actually have a question about challenges for you, because knowing about the Middle East, the role of women there is so defined in terms of it being very subservient, very. And I don't know if Dubai is different, but I've been in places like Doha, and I've been to Dubai, and I've been to Bahrain. So I see, women there are. I mean, Sandeep, my friend in Nepal, told me, like, even at a hotel, if there's a party, like a wedding party, the women are separated from the men, and they can't be seen partying at all. So there's all these.
Where? In Nepal?
In Bahrain.
In Bahrain. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, as a woman living in a society where, the women all have to be covered and, there's...
Well, I think the difference in Dubai, too, was that, it was a very large expat community, right?
Yeah, so it's got this international...
Yeah. But honestly, you have the women that, wear the
full burqa.
All that. But I would say that one of the things that shocked me the most about being there was the power of these women, right? Like, it would appear that they would be like disempowered or whatever, or didn't have any, power or whatever. But the truth of the matter is they were really strong women. So, like I said, I heard about that, but I didn't really see that. The women that I met were very much like, as a matter of fact, in Dubai, they talk about how they try to make sure that women have positions of power, like a lot. Even like their, I don't know what's called, their cabinet or something or other. Like they tried to make it that it was like maybe at least 50% of it were women. So it wasn't like, I didn't see that part of it as much. I mean, you see little things here and there, but for the most part, even from my friends who were Emirati friends, even just talking to them about it, and it wasn't what you thought it was. You know what I mean? It wasn't what it appeared to be from the outside. It was very much women having way more. They they accepted the cultural aspects in terms of like the religious things, whatever, for the most part. But really, they were very like.
Well, I was just curious because you look at, for example, the position of women in places like India
Saudi
or places. Nepal's a little different, but in India especially, women are considered the underclass. Or you look at places like Iraq or Iran
or Saudi
or
Arabia
Jordan. Even in Jordan, my friend Nancy went to teach in Jordan, and she hated it because women were so I'll say mistreated. They were really and she just despised women being treated that way. And I know in a lot of countries in the Middle East it is that way. So Dubai must stand out in many ways because it is such an international hub of so many different nationalities and
but didn't you say you had to get a license to buy
even
liquor?
To drink, right?
Yeah, for that you did. Yeah, so it's not like completely like free-nilly whatever open or whatever. No, you do have to have a license to buy liquor technically. I'll just say technically.
Okay.
Right? You have to have a license to buy liquor for your home, right? But you can go out to different places, and as long as the place has their license, and mostly the places that only had liquor licenses were hotels. So if you go to a restaurant or whatever that's associated with a hotel, then you're fine. And pretty much every place you went to, for the most part, you were able to buy alcohol, right? And to the point where you can go weeks without having to pay for alcohol as a woman because they had so many ladies' nights.
Oh.
Okay. So there's
funny.
a partying going on
Yeah.
in Dubai. So it definitely was totally different in out here. A lot of the other Emiratis Emirates be, or even other places in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Like in Saudi Arabia, they say you can't even get off the plane as a woman without being covered.
Yeah.
Right? That's not Dubai. Like you even see people walking around. I saw some outfits that I was not prepared for. Like, I thought y'all couldn't wear that over here. I left all my skanky clothes at home, and you mean to tell me I could have been mini skirting it up, right? What?
Yeah.
But it was a little more loose. I mean, and it wasn't like you were going to get into. I don't know how much trouble you would be into, more so than it was like just looked upon like about it. So
So getting back to, you had asked, what did you find to be the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge for me really was just the school itself that I was working in.
Okay.
It could have been. The first year was great. I think it was it was great. It's relative, but it was a nice experience the first year because I felt like the way that it was they were trying to figure themselves out,
right.
And I'm okay in that space to a certain degree, right?
Sure.
Because I like to build things, I like to create things. The second year though, they were still trying to figure themselves out, but they hadn't really gotten much further than what they were, right? So almost honestly, they were trying to fool themselves into thinking that they were a certain place, but it kind of was like that, like, okay, but you're not. And they weren't really taking heeding advice or listening. So it was like, okay, I can only be in that space, for this confusion space, for so long before I have to move out of that space in order to not lose who I am.
Right.
And it actually ended up being a reason why I left, because it was like, okay, you guys don't know what you're doing. You're not listening to the help at all. You're making me feel like I'm dumb at this point. Like, do I know what I'm doing? Because it doesn't make any sense. I can't afford. I've come too far in life as a person to figure out who I am to allow somebody else to tell me that I'm not. Right. Even if it's just like they're not doing it on purpose. It's just being who they are. It's like, I can't do this anymore. So that's ultimately the reason why I had to leave.
Yeah.
I could have tried to stick it out if it wasn't for again, the pool wasn't strong enough.
Sure.
The pool was stronger to be home. So it's like, okay, given all these dynamics, I don't need this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And how about for you, Patrick? What was the biggest challenge or greatest challenges?
So the biggest challenge for me moving to Nepal, I would have to say, were all the elements of the poverty. So when I say the poverty, which is very different from Dubai, I mean, Dubai is probably
wealthy,
one of the wealthiest cities on the planet.
They say that.
Well, in terms of, think about like the oil. I mean, it's an oil nation. You look at the buildings in Dubai, and you look at what the resources they have there. It has a lot of resources.
It has a lot of resources, way more than
Right. So Nepal, what are the biggest challenges that I faced were any of the elements of poverty that then spilled over into your daily life. So I'm talking about things like not having access to drinking water. So we'd have to filter. When my first year there, it was constantly boiling the water, filtering it in a filter tank before we could drink it or cook with it, making sure we washed everything that was fresh in iodine water to make sure we didn't get any, digestive illnesses from unclean food. And then, so that's element number one. And then there was the electricity. We were under load shedding, which was a planned outages of power twice a day. So you had maybe 6 hours of power in the morning and 6 hours of power in the evening. And then the other 12 hours you were without power. So we got used to, making sure we always had candles in the house. And then, in the heat of summer, lighting candles so that you can see at night, then you're just dealing with the heat of, your apartment. So with me, the biggest challenge of moving to Nepal was dealing with all the elements of how poverty and the lack of structure in their government played out with all the political buns where you couldn't go out on the streets because there were riots happening and the Maoists were protesting the government. I mean, I'll never forget the day I drove, school was closed because of a bund, and me and Jitendra.
Do you want to say what a bund is?
So a bunda is a political strike when the U.S. Embassy would put out a warning to everybody, and it would be broadcast over TV and radio, and we'd get emails that said everything is shut down, nothing can open, and that there would be active protests in the streets, which meant stay in, stay off the streets. So school closed, and we would just stay home. Wow. So kind of like we would have snow days here, we had bund days built into our schedule in Nepal. Wow. So if we had 8 bund days, it would go into our summer would be shortened, and we'd make up those days at the end of the year. But so a bunda could be really calm, and there could be nothing that happens, and then there could be these really violent active protests where people are protesting the government and decisions the government is making. But these could be even something like a truck accidentally hitting a pedestrian and then nothing being done about the truck driver doing this, and word would leak out that, this truck driver got away with this, and boom, you've got a bunda. You've got everybody protesting, and the country shuts down. The city, Kathmandu would shut down. So one day, Jitendra and I had to run over to school to get something in my classroom that I needed, even being at home. Jitendra and I jumped on my scooter, and we scootered over to school, and we saw nothing. The streets are totally empty, but you're actually not supposed to be out. You're supposed to just stay in. And we're coming back from school, and we see this huge mob of people moving down the street towards us. And my turn was just a little bit in front of them. I would have to turn down this one side street to the left. And Jitendra is pointing at them, and they're all marching with sticks and clubs and bats and metal rods and bricks and rocks, and they're looking for people that they can assault, basically, to make their point. So I knew, seeing a foreigner, driving towards them, and they all burst into a run, and they're charging towards me and Jitendra, and we quickly turn down the street. The crowd turns down. They're whipping their stuff at us. We were so lucky. If they would have caught us, we would have, I'm guessing, would have been killed. We would have been beat to death with these metal rods and bricks and everything, because we weren't supposed to be out. And I learned my lesson that day. If there's a bunda, we stay home. So my biggest challenge in Nepal was, Nepal is a developing nation. It is extreme poverty, extreme poverty, and that plays into even the life of an expat there, and that was very clear with water shortages and electricity shortages and shortages in petrol, where all of a sudden, you can't even get gas for your motorcycle. Wow. We would always have to have a storage container with extra petrol, with extra gasoline in it, so that we could, or gas cylinders that are imported from, they all come from India. Well, if India is upset at Nepal, they would stop sending they'd stop sending and then we had nothing to cook with, because all your stove, hooks up to a gas cylinder.
And I remember actually even when we visited there too, because Nepal depends on the tourism, they would really make a plea to people protesting to not go in the touristy areas, to really leave that alone. And for the most part, that was the case. They would leave the tourist areas alone so people could continue to enjoy their stay there while they were able to, protest. Wow. So those were the challenges, and we touched on, and we're going to end with what would you say are the biggest rewards so that there are, and I know that you guys think that there are many rewards for teaching and living overseas, and maybe you're speaking to people who are thinking about doing that themselves. So what were the rewards for you, and what advice would you give somebody who is maybe on the fence of thinking about making that decision?
I'll say for me, the biggest reward was just really learning about other people, and like my world opening up in so many different ways. Like I think about like how, this is going to sound so racist, but I think that when I would look at like Indian people, I thought that I didn't even realize that there were different, I met a person from Sri Lanka, and I was like, oh, wait a minute. So y'all got your own people? Like, this is how, seriously. And I'm just being real about
And they
that.
feel very strongly about it, too.
I totally get that.
Otherwise, like here, I just look at anybody who looks like that, I assume, they're probably Indian, right? Mm-hmm. But being there made me realize, oh, no, there are different sects of people, different countries, and different, blah, 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 which made me even more sensitive to the differences in us as Americans. Like, we have our similarities because we have a cultural similarity overall, but really it's so many differences. And so it made me more not just aware of and more sensitive to that idea, maybe more appreciative of people, and figuring out what I can actually learn from people in that way. So
do you feel it makes you a better teacher and artist?
I do.
Yeah,
again, it's like my world opened up. I wasn't just on my block anymore. I wasn't just on my street anymore. I wasn't just in my city anymore. It's like, now, no. And I had traveled around the U.S. prior to this, obviously, and even other places. But it was something about living there that makes a total difference, right? Like, even looking at issues of, being the black and white issue that we have in America so much, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody has their own issues. So, like, being in Dubai, they had their own issues. It was... I didn't realize that Filipinos were discriminated against so much, or the Indians were discriminated against so much, like there. So just being able to see, like, wow, what I consider so big in my world is really not that big in the grand scheme of the entire world, So I personally would say to anybody, go and live somewhere else for a considerable amount of time, even if it's just a year, even if it's just a month, maybe, I don't know if a month works or not, but a year at least, you get a chance to really explore and experience. And I lived in a safer space, right? I didn't live in Nepal where I had to go and get water, or I probably would have left. I'll tell you right now, I am princess in that way. Like, I saw a gecko one time. It was a little bitty little gecko. I was about to move back home. Like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. This is unnecessary. But yeah, so it was a nice transition place. But overall, I would say, do it. Go somewhere else so your world can expand. You can see that there's more, and live more. And
I think Americans need to do that. We're kind of isolated.
Yeah, we are. Everybody else knows about everybody else. Right. It's just us. We only know about us. Yeah. Everybody else is speaking other languages, and I felt like so incompetent in some ways. Yeah. I'm talking to my friends, they're able to switch in and out of languages, and I'm like, it's like a magic power to be able to speak another language. I need to get one of those. But at this point, I'm kind of like, you know what? They have Google Translate. It's fine. It's perfectly fine.
So, Patrick, how about you?
Well, I have to agree with Ty. I would have to say, of all the many wonderful things that happened to me living in Nepal, the number one greatest gift that I was given by living overseas was the looking at the world through different eyes, looking at the diversity, and we talk about something called being culturally competent here in the United States. You know, are you culturally competent? And I have to say, being a teacher at an American school in another country and working with students from all over the world, because our student population was kids from all over the planet. The exposure as an educator to that alone, let alone like the experiences you had being exposed to the diversity of Dubai, being exposed to the diversity of Nepal, the rewards of that are so life-changing in terms of the way you view the world. I come back here with a whole new set of knowledge that I know so many people do not have in the way I deal with individuals, the way I view other people. It's so funny because just the other day there was a video posted online, and it was an Indian man dealing with a white customer, Indian from India, dealing with a white customer at his store, and the customer had taken offense to some behavior that the Indian man had engaged in. And when I watched the video, I said, that's so typical. That behavior is very typical in Indian culture. I think it had some, I know exactly what it had. That would be one example. But I think it had to do with weight. It had to do with the Indian man making a comment about the customer's weight. And the thing is, you know that in India, weight, the bigger you are, the more a sign of prestige and success and wealth is represented by that, because it means that you're eating well and you're living well. So if you're a big person in India, they know, wow, you're a success. And he had made some comment to the customer, almost commenting on, oh, I can see you're getting bigger or something like that. But I'm sure he meant it as, you're doing well. You're not starving. You're doing well in life. And the customer was over the top offended by the behavior. And so my comment was, if you know anything about Asian culture, if Americans were more culturally aware of some of the cultural differences in other countries, you would know, right? And it's funny because other people also commented in the comment section saying exactly the same thing. I lived overseas. There was nothing wrong with what he did or said. And you would know that if you knew anything about this culture. You think about taking our shoes off before we enter a house, or in the Philippines, belching after a meal. We would consider that offensive. In the Philippines, it's the ultimate sign of respect for the family if you belch as you're eating their meal, because it says to them, you're full and you've enjoyed the dinner. You know what I mean? So I have to say the greatest gift that I got in being an overseas educator was becoming what I feel I'm now, a culturally competent individual.
And I see taking that into the classroom, so much more.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Time. And although I haven't lived overseas, I've traveled for a number of years, and I feel like every time I bring back something that I've learned about not only myself, but about the world too. And it just makes me more aware here when I encounter people from other places, and making sure that we celebrate them as well. I think it's super important. So thank you. You guys were a gift today to me. It was fun to hear your stories, and we thank everyone for listening. And thank you, Ty Johnson, for joining us. Hope you'll come back. We can talk about other things. And Nathaniel, thanks again, once again, for doing our tech stuff. We appreciate it. And you did occasionally, chime in a little bit. So it's always nice to hear you. And thanks, Patrick, for being a guest and a host.
You're welcome.
Pay you double for this.
That's right.
And then finally, we'd like to thank one last shout out to our good friend and expert musician Jeremy Kahn for providing our opening and closing music. So we'd like to thank him for that. And we will hopefully see you soon.
Share more stories.
Share more stories.
Thanks for joining us on Story Power.
Bye.
Bye.